This is the 2020 LEGO 1989 Batmobile. And yes, that may be confusing to some. The nomenclature is not that great on this set, nor was it on last year's 1989 Batmobile from 2019. It's just a little confusing, isn't it? But LEGO has done it again, bringing in another fine display piece for fans of LEGO Batman. If you guys enjoy, make sure you hit that like button, and let's get into all the fine little details on this LEGO Batwing. Being introduced in 2020, the 18 plus lineup of sets now includes a Batman set, with set number 76161 with 2,363 pieces, and within those pieces you'll find 3 minifigures, which we'll be taking a look at in a moment. The set in the United States retails for $200, making it the second most expensive Batman set that you can buy, second only to the 1989 Batmobile. So this box for this set actually provided a very interesting first for me. You'll notice that you can very easily pick out my lights in the box, and even me in the background of the box there reflecting, because this set has kind of an extra reflective coating on the box, which looks incredible. It really popped out to me when I saw it at the LEGO store today, and I don't think that many other sets have coatings like this. I don't think this is unheard of. I'm pretty sure they've done this on sets in the past, but as far as for this set, it does help it really pop. But it's actually the first time I've ever had to use glass cleaner to clean up my box, because there were fingerprints all over this from me holding it. And you'll see if I touch this, maybe it's not as apparent right now just because maybe my fingers aren't as greasy because I washed them or whatever. But I actually had to go in and clean it up because there were fingerprints on there. So it's very different as far as a LEGO box goes, but it's still very, very beautiful, with the Batwing really showing its full size there on the front end. As usual, the backside of LEGO boxes show an alternate angle of the main model, and then in this case, it tells you that you can actually mount this set on the wall. You've also got the dimensions of the build in case you just need to know where it'll fit, and then you have another angle of the build with it on its stand, which is in gray instead of black. We'll get to that. And then finally, the minifigures. The unboxing experience for most LEGO sets is pretty cut and dry. This one has 3 pieces of tape on either flap, which you can cut through very easily to get to the inside of the box, which I'm just noticing is white. Usually the inside of the boxes aren't white, so that's a little bit different here with this particular set. The parts come in bags numbered all the way from 1 to 13, as well as a couple of extra unnumbered bags that you're going to have to open when you need the parts. You also have a pretty thick instruction manual, as well as a sticker sheet saved in a little plastic bag here so that it doesn't get bent during shipping. The minifigures come on what may be a very familiar stand to some. I believe the architectural term for this is a cornice. It's basically the top part of a building or wall that's decorated like this. And so you can see how that kind of ledge creates itself there. And then you have this top platform with some studs on it that hold your 3 minifigures, being the 1989 Batman, the Boombox Goon, whose name is actually Lawrence, which I found rather amusing, and then the Joker. And I don't like the Joker. I don't think the Joker in this set is very good. Not that it's a particularly inaccurate minifigure, I just find the artistic design of this Joker to not be my favorite. It's just not a good look for him, in my opinion. So that's why I look at that. Here's the back of the figures. Batman, obviously, using that same all-in-one piece that we saw introduced, I believe, last year with the 1989 Batmobile. But in general, looking pretty good here on this stand. And the stand is the same build as last year's figure stand, so they would go very nicely side by side. I do quite like the Lawrence, though. I think he is incredible looking. They got the mustache really down there, and then of course the Joker cards on his right shoulder, nothing on the left. And then removing Batman's piece here, you can see that all in one thing. He does have a second facial expression, so that's all you really get with the figures, though. It's not, you know, the main point of buying this set, I would say. I think Lawrence is the one figure that you might really want out of these 3. I mean, maybe you like the Joker, but I think Lawrence is the most exciting, because if you have the 1989 Batmobile, you already have the Batman. So, for some reason you couldn't tell, the Batwing is absolutely huge, and it is shaped like the Batman symbol, of course. You can kind of see the shadow there below, which is actually really neat looking at that. But this set has what I think might be the best UCS-style stand I've ever seen on a LEGO set, Star Wars or otherwise. It's just really strong, and I really like the light gray look of it for some reason. Like a lot of the Star Wars ones, you know, say the Darth Vader's TIE Fighter over there, or the Slave one up there, are done in black, but this one, because the Batwing is all black, they didn't want to do something that would kind of blend into it. They did something to contrast, and it worked out surprisingly well. The build is really solid. Everything just connects together dang near perfectly. It's all tiled off mostly with a few studs to make it still look like Lego, and that they kind of had to use them there just for what the design is. So it worked out really nicely there. And then you have the back support for the stand here with the main support running up into the Batwing. And the Batwing is actually easily removable from this. I'll show you that in a moment. But this is also really solid. So sometimes with these stands, what you can do is like you can push it forward and slightly angle it differently. If you were able to push this forward, what would happen is the whole thing would go forward and the Batwing would make the whole thing fall down because it would be too front heavy there. It just wouldn't work. This thing is angled like perfectly to distribute its weight without it falling down. It also does have a sticker plaque here, which is going to give you your max speed, your cruising speed, your length, height, wingspan, engines, and weapons, along with a nice silhouette shot of the Batwing there, again from 1989. Taking the Batwing off its stand is actually relatively easy. It can be done as simply as just pulling the set up and away from the stand. You can see how they designed it to just be all tiled up and it doesn't actually connect to the Batwing. So it's a really intriguing design from that aspect. And then just to show you, you can see that little bit of blue there. That's that hole that you stick the stand in to hold the Batwing. And that's basically on the back end of the middle of the Batwing. You'll also find the mount under here, which is going to allow you to mount the Batwing on the wall. You're going to need a screw, and you're really going to want to make sure it's on a strong part of the wall. The instructions are really explicit about how to do this. So it really does tell you you're going to need the correct materials and the correct spot to do it. You don't want to do it on a wall that might crumple on down, so be careful with that. Now the Batwing does also on the bottom here, if I can show this without breaking it, have these little wings that'll fold down. Now obviously when I set this down without the stand, they'll be pushed back into their position like they just were, but it is interesting that they do have a couple of little details on the bottom of the Batwing, which is mostly just the bottom side of plates, but they did get a few things in there, which was great. But you can see when I set it back down, it's going to lay flat on the table, which is not a bad way to display it either, I suppose, but it does take up a lot of space if you want to display it like this without it being on its stand or displaying it connected to the wall. Let's talk about the accuracy of the design. The instruction manual includes an image of the Batwing with a side profile here, and you can see that the cockpit is not super elongated. It is somewhat shorter and taller than the one that you see in the Lego set, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to point out as being inaccurate to the real thing, and that's the main thing that I would say pops out to me. Everything else looks like they really got as spot on as you could, and I guess the same can be said for the cockpit, but they could have made a special piece, I suppose, for it, but they didn't. And I don't think it's the end of the world, but I do think that it's something that is a little off-putting now that I know it's not 100% proper. So let's take a look at all of the details and features they included on the Batwing itself. You have a couple of flaps done in gray on the wings of the set, and I don't know if I'm a big fan of the gray. From the image that they put in the Lego instructions, they looked more black, but maybe they just did it so that they stand out on the set, and that's fine. You can open them up pretty far, which is probably inaccurate, but you know, usually you're just going to leave them laying down anywhere. Maybe open at like a 15 to 30 degree angle is fine, but you know, it's not like a huge thing to me to have the flaps there. They're just not that important. And honestly, I could also see some people changing them out to be all black because it would fit much better in with the black of the rest of the design. Now, something interesting they did, and that kind of hides away on the camera more than it does in real life, I would say, is that they used these grill pieces to create some of the texture that is on the back side of the wing here. And you can see it exactly the same on the other end of the Batwing. You have a couple of guns up here in gray, and you have some giant mini guns on the side of the Batwing cockpit there, which look great. It's actually a really cool design. I actually quite enjoyed building these as well. Same thing on the right side there. And then you have 4 missile launchers mounted right behind the cockpit as well that are denoted in that very nice dark red, which pops out obviously compared to the rest of the Batwing in black and gray. A little bit of red never hurts, so that looks really nice there. You have the fins for the Batwing up above that. You have kind of a middle fin here, done with a nice flat piece, so it all flows very nicely. I think it's a good word for the set, is it has flow to it. And I think that really shows where everything kind of slopes in together to this point at the back. I think that works out really nicely. You have nice paneling here on the sides next to the minigun. The back does not open, like there's no like back compartment here. You might think that, hey, this piece usually in some sets you could pull off. Not in this one, it's just solidly built. Now, as far as the cockpit goes, it's elongated, like I said, and it doesn't stay in place. So my issue with it is, and I guess it's not a playset, but if you pick this thing up and you flip it upside down, this is coming out. It doesn't actually connect in with any pieces or studs, so it's fine. But another issue I had with it was that mine showed up, and these come in kind of their separate bag, but they came scratched. You can see some of the scratches on the pieces there, and I could not not wipe those off. So that is going to be a problem with some people's copies of the set. And it's not hugely noticeable. You may not have even noticed it if I didn't point it out, but you can see the pieces came scratched, and that is not going to be ideal for something you're paying $200 for. The cockpit, you'll find stickers for the control panels, which have a lot of controls on them, and for obvious reasons aren't printed. You have a minifigure there on the main control panel, and then my thing is the chairs kind of leaned far back, right? If you're Batman, are you really going to be leaning this far back to fly the Batwing? Like in the picture like I showed, it seems like it's a little more up, but obviously they had to put it so far back to go ahead and allow that cockpit to run over it, and this is not going to fit your minifigures. I mean, you can put a minifigure there, but obviously it's a little bit bigger than minifigure scale, if you will. And then at the back here, you have the Bat engine, which is a nice touch. The designer said that they kind of came up with that idea to put the Bat engine logo on what is the Bat engine, which actually just has a couple of crowbars in it, so I guess it's not much of an engine actually, but it's still a nice detail to have there, and a fun one at that. Now, speaking of fun details, something I do want to show you is the way that these wings get put together here, because it's quite an interesting design process. And so you can see up close here, they're held in partially by rubber bands and partially by other connections that are made throughout the length of this thing here. So I noticed when building, you have these printed Batwing symbols, and somewhere in here, they just kind of stick in. And so they have some printed pieces in the set, but they're pieces you can't even see. So it kind of feels like a waste, but I also think it's a really cool Easter egg as you're building to know that they're in there. I think that's something different and interesting that LEGO did with this particular set. So I do want to show you myself picking up this set. You can pick it up from both sides if you pick up both sides at the same time. You can't really pick up one side at a time because it's so heavy. I mean, I guess you could pick it up and hold it like this. It's a very sturdy, strong build. The entire interior is Technic and then kind of covered in black plates. You can see because it's so thin, it's basically going to be a Technic brick with a plate on top of it. And then you can hold it with one hand if you get it underneath like this, and you can fly it around. Can't even hear any pieces shaking when you move the set, so that is unique. And let me show you this. Like I said, the cockpit is not attached, so if I flip it over, give it a little shake, it's going to fall out and break. This set has been a great experience for me. From the building process to the finished model, I think this is a great $200 LEGO Batwing. I don't think this is a bad set at all, other than, like I said, the canopy piece being just not the proper angle. I don't think that's the end of the world for this set. It really delivers in a lot of ways that are fun, and it's a really striking display piece, especially with the ability to hang it on a wall. Now, I'm not that inclined to hang it on a wall myself. I would rather put this thing in a place where it's not going to get dusty, because if you expose it on the wall, unless you build some kind of custom case to plaster on the wall along with it, you're going to have problems with dust. So I would certainly try to recommend getting a display case for this, because much like the 1989 Batmobile, it's got that all black design, and all black designs tend to be dust magnets, and you want to stay away from that as much as possible. The minifigures certainly excite in some ways, but not so much in others for me. But overall, this is a solid 9 out of 10 set. It's certainly worth the $200 price tag if you're into the Batwing from Batman in 1989. Even though it's not like predominantly featured, it's still a really neat vehicle that most people would be like, oh yeah, that's the Batwing. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comments section below. I think it's pretty amazing. You're gonna have to have a space to display it for sure. Like, this thing wouldn't fit on the shelves behind me. It's just too dang big, I think. But if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.